K2. At 28,251 feet or 8,611 meters, K2 is the second highest mountain on Earth. K2 is colder, meaner, and more technical than its taller neighbor. The slopes are steeper, the weather is worse, and the climbing is more technical. It's for this reason that despite having less than a tenth of the ascents of Everest, K2 has more than a third of the deaths. So, in this video, we're going to look at why K2 is considered one of the most difficult and dangerous mountains on Earth and the impossible first attempts to conquer it. K2 doesn't bargain, it tests. On this pyramid of ice and stone, confidence can save you and undo you in the same hour. The summit sits at 8,611 meters, but the number isn't why climbers whisper its name. What matters is the personality. K2 is the peak that punishes hesitation, rewards precision, and exposes any weak link, gear, weather call, teamwork, before you can fix it. That reputation didn't appear overnight. It was forged by early failures that built a myth, a first ascent shadowed by accusation, disasters that rewired how we think about risk, and a modern era of crowds, cameras, and hard conversations about what it means to pass another human being in the death zone. The fear begins at a choke point carved into the route like a toll booth, the bottleneck. It sits around 8,200 meters, a thin gully that tilts to frightening angles and runs directly beneath a hanging serac, tons of ice that can shear off without notice. Every main line to the top crosses this spot. It's steep, exposed, and narrow enough that a short delay can trap multiple teams under the same ceiling. If fixed ropes vanish, if weather snaps, if one person falters, rescue is mostly a story we tell ourselves to feel better. The best tactic has always been simple and brutal. Move clean, move fast, and don't stop where gravity wants you. Long before anyone learned how to play that narrow hour, K2 had already started writing its own legend. In 1902, Oscar Eckenstein led a ragtag international team, including the infamous Aleister Crowley up the Northeast Ridge. Weeks of storms and sickness hammered them, yet they clawed higher than common sense allowed for the gear of the day. 7 years later, the Duke of Abruzzi scouted the Southeast Spur, steep, technical, and frighteningly exposed. He retreated and left an echo behind. Unclimbable. The irony is that his reconnaissance traced the line most teams still follow, proof that even a retreat can draw a map for the future. When the first ascent finally came in 1954, it should have ended the argument about possibility. Instead, it lit one about truth. Achille Compagnoni and Lino Lazzadelli reached the summit, but teammate Walter Bonatti argued that decisions about high camp placement and oxygen put him and Amir Mahdi in extreme peril. For decades, the official story and Bonatti's account clashed like icefall. Years later, a formal re-examination largely vindicated Bonatti's version, a rare instance of a national epic being rewritten after the fact. K2 was climbed, but it still managed to turn teammates into rivals long after they touched down. If you want to understand why the mountain breaks so many plans, follow the standard line up the Abruzzi Spur. There's House's chimney, a vertical crack first solved in 1938 after a fight that took hours. Even today, with fixed gear, it's a rite of passage at a height where your lungs complain about everything. Above that lies the Black Pyramid, a steep mixed maze that burns time, strength, and oxygen. These features aren't just obstacles, they're time thieves. They turn a good weather window into a tightrope and push tired climbers into the bottleneck later than they planned. And that, on K2, is where margins disappear. The cost of being late got carved into history in two brutal chapters. In 1986, shifting storms and scattered teams led to a season that became shorthand for K2's temper. 13 lives lost, some on the summit ridge and many during long, wind-scoured descents when the mountain felt endless. Survivors limped down with fingers and toes gone to frostbite and memories that hushed camps for years. 22 years later, 2008 delivered a different script with the same ending. A chunk of the serac above the bottleneck let go, cutting the fixed ropes and erasing the way down in the dark. 11 climbers never came home. The message was miserable and clear. Success at 3 in the afternoon can still become disaster by 8 if you're caught under that ceiling. For decades, one frontier remained sacred: winter. K2 in winter was the final boss. Then, on a wind-sliced day in January 2021, a united Nepali team made the impossible feel inevitable. They regrouped below the summit and stepped onto the top together, a chorus where the sport usually writes solos. It wasn't free from debate. Arguments flared over style, oxygen use, and what counts as pure, but the image stuck. A team deciding to finish as one, in air so thin it hurts to speak. On K2, even triumph comes with footnotes, yet that day reset the storyline for what was possible when skill, timing, and unity finally aligned. The next act forced everyone to look in the mirror. In 2023, high near the bottleneck, Pakistani porter Muhammad Hassan was gravely injured as a queue crept upward on a single rope. Video and witness accounts ricocheted online. Was anyone to blame? Some said there wasn't space or strength to mount a full rescue in that terrain. Others said the line shouldn't have moved at all while a human lay in distress. An official inquiry did not assign blame to a particular team, but it pointed at deeper problems. Uneven training and gear standards for high-altitude porters, poor traffic management under the Serac, and record-chasing timelines that turn people into obstacles. In 2024, climbers recovered Hassan's body and carried him down. One wound closed, a larger conversation opened. What realistically can be done at 8,000 meters when minutes mean lives, and when moving or stopping both carry their own risks? Meanwhile, K2's numbers were changing. For years, it carried a near-mythic fatality ratio. Then a new pattern appeared. Weather modeling improved. Rope-fixing teams grew stronger, faster, and more systematic. Supplemental oxygen systems got better, comms tighter, rescue coordination more practiced lower on the route. In 2022, permits surged and a window snapped open. Roughly 200 climbers stood on top that season, including a single day where it seemed like everyone threaded the needle at once. In 2023, over 100 summited again. The long historical death rate began to tilt downward. Not to zero, never that, but down. The risk didn't vanish. It migrated. It concentrated at choke points and clustered around timing mistakes. The question shifted from, can you climb it, to, can everyone move safely through the same narrow hour? That's a different equation, and its 1K2 still answers with a shrug. Part of the uncertainty comes from the ice itself. The Karakoram is the puzzle piece that won't fit the global picture. While many mountain ranges have watched their glaciers retreat, parts of the Karakoram have been stubbornly stable in recent decades, even growing in places. That phrase, stable, sounds friendly. It isn't. Stable doesn't mean predictable. Weather still swings hard. Layers of wind slab, fresh snow, and hard crust stack up in patterns you can't fully read from below. Add light-absorbing pollution like black carbon darkening the snow and speeding melt in microbursts, and you get a Serac that seems sound one season and sours the next. The bottleneck sits at the center of that uncertainty. One year, perfect bridges and firm steps. The next, traps disguised as progress. A plan that worked last July can betray you this July, and the mountain does not care that your logistics app says go. So, is K2 turning into the new Everest? Not really. The crowds are newer, the rope work is sharper, and summit totals are higher, but K2 still fights back in ways guided efficiency can't always cover. House's chimney still burns time, the Black Pyramid still taxes legs and lungs, and the bottleneck still decides who gets a clean descent. The paradox is cruel and simple. The more humans try to optimize K2, the more the mountain shuffles the deck. Weather, ice, timing, until somebody misplays a card. Strip away the legend and you're left with a pattern. The early explorers mapped possibilities and found limits. The first ascent proved the top is reachable, but showed how messy truth can be when pride and survival collide. The black seasons taught that the descent counts more than the summit photo, because darkness, wind, and broken rope don't care how high you went. The winter ascent reminded the world what unity looks like at the very edge of endurance, and why style debates never fully end. The Hassan tragedy forced a moral audit across the community, exposing how thin the line is between ambition and responsibility when every breath costs energy you don't have. K2 thrives on contradictions. It rewards teamwork yet isolates you when the air thins. It lowers its guard just long enough to let people dream, then tightens the noose around a choke point and reminds everyone who's in charge. That's why climbers keep returning. It isn't just the height, it's the riddle. The idea that if you arrive with perfect timing, a clean plan, and a team that moves like one organism, the mountain might let you pass. Some seasons it does. Other seasons it rewrites the puzzle while you're still solving it. Maybe that's the closing truth. On K2, danger isn't a label, it's a moving target. The route has a memory, the weather has moods, the ice keeps its secrets until you're standing under it, and by then, you've already made your choice. Step fast, step clean, leave no debt for the descent. Because the savage mountain does not bargain, and when it's done teaching, it doesn't repeat the lesson.